It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you. In the past few days, there have been calls for major budget cuts on various campuses and rumors about cuts on others, and that's what I want to address. But first, I want to say, and I'm joined by all the other PSC officers and staff, I want to wish you well and hope you are healthy, and that those you love and those you live with, your families, are also healthy. Also that you're taking care of yourselves in this time of incredible stress and anger and grief. I salute you, PSC members, and I really stand in awe of the work you have done in such a short time to transform your teaching, your counseling, the other service you do to students, reconfigure it utterly for a new environment. And it has taken imaginative work, logistical, intellectual work, emotional work. We see that in the union, and even if management doesn't see it, we see that and we want to support you. We are struggling and working to support you every day. Everyone knows that we are in for a fight in the economy. We know that we are facing not only a staggering health crisis, but also perhaps an unprecedented economic crisis. We know that there will be threats to CUNY's budget, but allowing college presidents to call for cuts now, before the university's budget situation is even clear, undermines the entire university. It is dangerous for all of us, above all because it sends the message that cuts to CUNY are inevitable and acceptable. They are neither. What the administration should be doing at this moment instead is demanding new investment in CUNY. If this terrible pandemic has shown us anything, it has shown the critical importance of investing in the public sector, in the common good, in the institutions that serve and sustain people. CUNY is one of those institutions. It is not unthinkable that there could be massive new investment in CUNY as part of the solution to this economic crisis. During the Depression, 3 new CUNY colleges were built or established: Queens College, Brooklyn, and Lehman, and all while keeping tuition free. It is not impossible to do something imaginative, bold, and important again. Instead, what we are seeing is calls for cuts. The union leadership is already engaged in the kind of expansion of power that we know we're going to need to fight back against cuts to all of us in the public sector. We've expanded our coalitions with students, with other labor unions, with the progressive movements that are rising in this crisis, working together to make sure that the solution involves not just enriching the already rich, but involves redistributing resources to communities of color, to the poor, to the working class. And that's what we're fighting for. We are also, of course, and above all, fighting for every single PSC member. We will fight for every position, every job. The solution to this crisis is not to take people off payroll. It's to keep everyone working, keep everyone on payroll. And let me explain what the truth is about the budget situation so we can see what's wrong with the current demands for cuts. The state budget has been settled. The city budget is still in process. The state has already announced a plan, a call for a cut of $20 million to the community colleges starting immediately. There are already plans to renegotiate that and fight back against that. The real threat is not in the current budget, and it has not even really materialized. The real threat is the expected shortfalls, massive shortfalls in revenue from both the city and the state. The state is predicting between $10 and $15 billion of revenue shortfall. If there are shortfalls in revenue, the state budget gives the budget director, who sits on our board of trustees, and the governor unilateral power to make cuts in budgets, and that's the real danger. But that hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet, and the city budget cut so far is a cut that we will fight back against, but it is not at the scale of the cuts that are being demanded right now. What the CUNY Central Administration has done is calculate what the impact of a $10 billion drop in the state budget would do, put out that number, and then colleges have acted on that number and called preemptively for cuts. The union will not accept panicked, ill-informed plans to reduce course offerings for students and terminate critically needed faculty and staff positions. Instead of demanding cuts, the administration should be defending the university. And it's important to know that the situation is not just a threat of cuts. There are also mitigating factors which work against the possibility of cuts, and those need to be considered before there's any discussion of cuts. And the union will oppose cuts right the way through. But before any cuts are considered, the PSC demands that every dollar of college reserves must be accounted for publicly and put to work protecting our students and our jobs. The full extent of federal stimulus money for higher education and the coming stimulus money for states and cities has to be evaluated and its impact on CUNY measured before there's any discussion of cuts. The federal stimulus that was most recently passed, the major CARES stimulus, included specific funding for higher education and more than $100 million in short-term funding for CUNY as an institution to mitigate the effects of the COVID virus. That money has to be accounted for. And that legislation specifically names keeping people on payroll. The unions, including ours, fought to get that language in there, and it's there, and it should be observed. Also, we need announcement of any cost savings from the 2+ months of virtual shutdown of CUNY campuses. We need to balance that against any revenue losses in that period. We need to see that. We need to know the enrollment projections for the entire university. There are projections showing enrollment going up, going down. We need to see those and see on what basis they're being made. Also, we need to look at other things that could be considered, must be considered, because before there's any discussion of cuts. At other universities, people on the executive pay plans have taken temporary salary cuts. That should be considered before there's any cutting of adjunct positions or any other positions. And finally, and in some ways most important, there are still policy changes that could be made. The PSC has been part of a coalition that fought with many other unions and community groups in this round of budget discussions for a change in New York State's taxation to reinstate fair taxes on the very rich. That's exactly what was done in the Depression. It was done after September 11th. It was done after 2008. And the state declined to do that in this budget when there was the right moment and the opportunity to do that. It is still possible to change the taxation and bring in more revenue that we need. All of us at CUNY are doing our utmost to keep CUNY afloat. We love what we do, and we believe in our students. We support their hopes for their lives. That's why we're doing what we do. Already, union chapters have begun to fight back against demands for cuts at certain campuses, and they've begun to make headway. We must all be in that fight. I'm asking you to take the first step. First step is really conceptual, to reject the notion that cuts are inevitable. They are not. There is an alternative, and we as unions have to stake out that ground. We have that leadership ability, and that's what we need to claim. And as a first step, I'm asking you to send a letter. Click on our website. You'll see a letter to the Chancellor and to the Chair of the Board of Trustees demanding that they reverse course and stand up for the students, faculty, and staff, and not roll out the welcome mat for cuts that have not even been demanded in the state budget. So take that first step. There will be many other steps in this fight. We will be fighting all through this year, but we have to start by rejecting the notion that we just lie down and die when there's even a threat of cuts. CUNY is worth fighting for. We are fighting for it every day. We need to see our administration at least joining us in that fight while we lead it. So send your letter, and please take care of yourselves. Thank you.